Great. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the California Housing Finance Agency to order. And welcome, everyone. And just a quick, since I'm new to this system too, mic check. Everyone can hear me okay, right? It's all being recorded. Great. And with that, I'd like to ask Melissa to please call the roll.
Good morning. Ms. Avila Farias. Ms. Cabildo. Chair Cervantes.
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan for Ms. Brandt.
Here.
Ms. Lamont.
Here.
Mr. Henning for the Treasurer Ma. Mr. Prince.
I am here.
Mr. Russell.
Present.
Mr. Fiegels for Secretary Sin.
Here.
Ms. Sotelo.
Here.
Mr. Seeley for Mr. Velasquez.
Here.
Dr. White.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Mirzazad for Director CalHFA. Ms. Miller for Director Steppenshaw. And Ms. Johnson Hall.
Here. Good morning.
Chair, we do have a quorum.
Great. Thank you so much. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes for December the 14th. I'd like to see if there are any comments, and if not, ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Great. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Thank you, Director White. Our protocol is to approve the minutes with a motion and second, and we will do so. I think just to start us off here really quickly, this is going to be a really interesting session. We have 5 of the MIP transactions, which is a really critical part of our work. Not the only thing we do, but it's an important part of our work. And we'll be working through those, have a budget update. We'll have more MIP transactions to approve in our next meeting. And then I've been talking with staff, that's the February meeting, and I've been talking with staff about the idea of a workshop in our December meeting to kind of talk through like what are our future directions, what are things that we might be considering. But the key thing is to sort of put I don't want to say a bow on it, but to sort of like wrap up these 5 MIP transactions that staff's been working on through the bulk of this year and move them along. So I'd like to look forward to those discussions later on. With that, I'll turn to our Executive Director, Tina Johnson-Hall.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Cervantes.
Good thing that my husband is an audio man, I would have a better handle on this. I'm working on it. We are somewhat late in the month, but I do want to wish everyone a happy new year. And just reiterate my thanks to you all for the work you put in last year, including my very favorable executive evaluation. I do want to thank you one and all for your accolades, your comments relating to what works well, helpful hints to consider in the future. And frankly, I've always found that process of a performance evaluation to be a really critical component for my personal success, which will now translate to a successful and effective CalHFA. So I want to thank you all for your support in the work that we do, but moreover, in investing in me. So now, on to the path forward for 2024. I am thrilled to be here to kick off what I know will be another great year for CalHFA. With the incredible support and leadership of the Board of Directors, we are primed for success. So I have just a few items that I want to hit before we dig deeper in today's agenda. So I'll start by sharing that our good news, bad news, our Director of Legislation, Frances Marti, has now moved on. And I apologize. I will, while we're trying to adjust that, I am going to try to speak a little louder. Okay. Oh, look at that. I'll take this one off and I'll put on the number. Is that better? Yes. All right, good. So good news, bad news is that our Director of Legislation, Frances Marti, has now left the organization, sadly. but he's taking on a great new position as the Senior Director of Strategy and Government Affairs for California, YIMBY. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with that organization, but they're one of the largest pro-housing organizations in the nation, and I say that because they're the largest in California, and we all know we lead the nation. He was always great to work with. While here, we wish him the best, and frankly, this is a very important position for CalHFA. So we're very thankful to the administration, to BCSH, and others who are going to help us fill this appointed position very, very quickly. Until then, our Chief Deputy Director, Chris Schultz, who has a wealth of legislative experience, will take point on all of our legislative efforts. So I would like to start with giving you an ADU update. When the board last met on December 14th, Chief Deputy Director Schultz reported that our ADU grant program had just begun, accepting applications for our newest allocation of the $25 million, and reservations were coming in very, very quickly. And then after the initial rush, the application portal remained open for a couple more weeks, and eventually we reached the target number of reservations and closed the portal on December 28th, before the end of the year. You have a complete report in the board package that I'm sure most of you have already peeked into, and but I just wanted to highlight how excited we are to help another 700 homeowners get started on an ADU. That's bold, that's big, and that's important for the state of California. The exact number will likely change on these reservations as they get finalized and the grant funds are sent out, but one piece that will not change is the impact that we are making in low-income housing communities. Because all of these homeowners, all of them, are at 80% or below of area median income. With the initial reservations, 65% are going to Los Angeles and Orange County, which we anticipated, because that matches the region's percentage of the permits that are issued for ADUs in the last few years. We also saw nearly 60% of those reservations go to homeowners that come from communities of color. So more on this work as the data gets finalized, and you'll continue to see updated reports throughout the year to show how this work is progressing. Also top of mind, so let's all say it together, the California Dream for All. That's a wonderful program we're in now in phase 2. And I'm sure all of you have seen the media coverage in the past week or so, which we believe will result in CalHFA providing specific program guidelines, the process, information to our lending partners. It's all starting all over again. The board has heard in previous meetings about our marketing and outreach strategies for the program. And I wanted to highlight this piece about the press because of what our marketing staff refers to as earned media. Earned media. That essentially means media or press coverage that we don't have to pay for, that is generated organically, either through things like social media shares, press mentions, things like that. Well, it's off the charts. Whether it's in spots on TV or radio news in Los Angeles, Univision, TV in Sacramento, Central Valley, Cal Matters article, it is viral. And so this is a great way to reach underserved folks who work all day, may not have access to a TV in the middle of the day. And then they catch the news from their local and trusted sources. So we think that this earned media that we are seeing will be supplemented by the targeted grassroots community outreach organizations, community-based organization partners, digital media, traditional advertising campaigns, conversations at the churches and the synagogues. And we hope that through those conversations, we're going to have an even more successful program than we did in phase 1. So prior to us officially kicking out those marketing and outreach strategies, we're holding training sessions for the lenders, for the real estate agents, housing counselors, and so forth, to ensure that we reach as many folks as we can who need this housing most. And I think, as a matter of fact, we had a session yesterday, and we are having one right now as this board is meeting. So, on to more great news. I'd also like to give the board a couple of updates on our hardship assistance programs, mortgage relief and the NMS housing counseling. For a mortgage relief program, we have announced an update to our delinquency date. This makes it so that homeowners who continue to be affected, unfortunately, by economic hardships due to the pandemic and have recently fallen behind, they still have an opportunity to access these very important funds. On the NMS front, a few of our senior staff members had a chance to attend a conference for some of the housing counselors that are receiving the funding through our program. The folks there had a message that I wanted to share with you guys. We know that there's been a tremendous impact on the folks who are receiving those counseling services. What we did not know was the tremendous impact to the housing counseling agencies that are rendering the services. And that's what they elevated to us in their voice. They said, thank you. Thank you. This gives us an opportunity to hire more people and retain the people that we have. It gives us an opportunity to deliver through technological advances that we didn't have the support for. And thank you, CalHFA, for basically changing the industry and giving us something to think about for the next 4 or 5 years that we have this program. I was very touched by hearing that conversation, because we often forget about those folks that are delivering the program as part of this process, and how important and key and essential they are for delivering these programs. So thank you to our NMS staff, Claire, which is represented here by Claire, but to me, impact, that's what impact looks like. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the MEP program. When we're going to have that get into our agenda, I'm looking forward to what Kate and her wonderful team has to say. They're going to be presenting 5 deals. And it should be noted that we also opened the 2024 MEP round, where we are putting available another $50 million to the public, and we are currently accepting applications. That opened on Friday, following the CITLAC TCAC meetings on Wednesday, where they voted to provide us with state-funded mixed income pool as part of the new construction set aside, and announced an allocation of $200 million in state tax credits that we will use to pair with the MEP program. I don't want to let the allocation of the state tax credits go by without a mention, because those annual allocations of state tax credits have been a huge driver of MEP as we know it. We must remember that those extra state tax credits are not guaranteed every year. They have been provided to us through one-time investments through the state budget each of the past few years, but going forward, that might look a little bit different. Why? Well, budget resources. So as we all know, we are becoming more constrained. So we as an agency, as the state's housing delivery system, need to be looking how we might be more innovative in how we deliver that MEP program. So that's top of mind for me this year. And of course, we'll get into this more when we have the board workshop that the chair has indicated, because but I want to highlight something that BCSH Deputy Secretary of Housing, Sasha Kurgan, explained earlier this month following the governor's budget proposal. She said, and she's here today, I think she's going to be here today, so I'll quote her and then I'll give her a chance to say her own thing. But what she said was, look, we can't control the budget situation. We can't. But we are not losing our commitment to work toward our housing goals. And in fact, we are turning it up. We're turning up the dial. She outlined some of the ways that we are going to continue to do that, including but not limited to pursuing additional federal funding, more and deeper collaboration between the housing agencies, which we do anyway, but we're just going to step up our game. And you probably noticed that we have some good news on the front last week, talking about stepping up the game. From the House and Ways Means Committee voted 40-3 in support of the tax relief for American Families and Workers Act, which includes the restoration of the 12.5% housing credit cap increase and lowering the 50% bond test to 30%. All of these things could be of tremendous benefit to the state of California if they get over the finish line. I'll also add that Governor Newsom, along with other Western governors, supported similar provisions in his November 2023 letter. So we're all on track to make this a successful year, but we're going to have to all roll up our sleeves. And then I'll just mention finally that the National Counseling State Housing Agency is encouraging all states to contact their relevant members of congressional delegations to push these items and the advocates to hope that we get this signed before the upcoming tax season. With that, Chair, if you don't mind, I know that Sasha is here, and I didn't want to take words out of her mouth. And I would love to give her an opportunity to speak. Where you comfortable with the mic? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tina. It is an interesting time. State budget processes and national budgets are tough, and I agree, and I maintain that we individually can't control the budget, but we can control our commitment to our work as professionals, and that these are the moments that we've been prepared for to endure, despite anything that gets thrown at us. But I also want to mention, especially for some of the newer board members too, who I know are not new to budget processes generally, but specifically the state budget, and for many of us who have been around the table have been in state budget processes for a while. And the January budget is a presentation that starts a conversation over several months, and it's not finalized until June. And so we will continue doing our work during that time, and we'll continue advancing efforts. Some of the things that are called out in the budget summary, like the executive director mentioned, focusing on some of the federal opportunities, not just what might happen in Congress, but things that are outlined in Biden's Housing Supply Action Plan that I think we might have spoken about as a board before, but the discretionary actions there, not just the budgetary proposals. So things that are real, tangible, and things that our state is uniquely positioned to do. So I'll be more specific and say that the Biden administration, like the Newsom administration, and I'd like to say that it's another way that California has been leading to highlight how housing sits at the nexus of other public policy areas. That if we don't have safe and stable housing, we're not going to have good outcomes in transportation. And our state has been working on transportation and housing programs and combining those two efforts for more than a decade. Additionally, that's not the only public policy area. Many housing authorities know and have done great research to show that if we don't have safe and stable housing, we won't have good educational outcomes. And so this is a time to keep calling in our partners to show our mutual interest in creating safe and stable opportunities. And then I just note that we're not done with the budget investments that we already have. And so, we're excited to see the launch of the Dream for All and continue to see the outcomes, and not just in the Dream for All specifically, but how things like My Home and uptake in My Home have increased just by virtue of CalHFA doing a tremendous job. Staying steady in My Home, but showing a new opportunity and showing how existing and ongoing lines of business can support new homeowners. So the administration will be here. I think it'd be best if maybe we wait until later in the budget season to talk about how it lands, but of course we can chat at any point, but I think it'll be a richer conversation later in the year. Thank you.
That terminates my comments, and thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to note that we have a couple of arrivals. Director Hennessy's arrived, and Director Thaddeus, make sure we note that. And I think I'd say the over-under on the meeting term is probably about 12:30 or so, maybe 1. Just to do a quick check, does anyone need to leave early? Just I want to make sure we maintain quorum. Go around. No hands. I think we're going to be good. Okay, great. With that, then, I'd like to move to our item number 4, which is the first of 5 MIP transactions that Kate Ferguson, the Director of Multifamily, will be presenting. And I will turn the floor over to her to talk through the Mason Sierra project and then the 4 subsequent MIP issues. So, Director.
I'm not sure how this is. All right, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Give me just a second to get organized. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chair Cervantes and members of the board. My name is Kate Ferguson, and I am the Director of Multifamily Programs. And today, CalHFA is submitting for your approval 5 board resolutions. Each resolution is specific to an individual affordable mixed-income project development, which is recommended for permanent financing approval under both the CalHFA tax-exempt permanent loan program, inclusive of our HUD risk share, and the CalHFA mixed income or MIP subsidy loan program. I just wanted to take a quick second to recognize the multifamily staff that is here today. We have both loan officers, Jennifer Beardwood and Kevin Brown, and we have our Deputy Director, Shantae Spears, and also Steve Gallagher, who manages our lending team. And these are the people in the trenches day to day getting these deals done for the past six months. So I'm happy to be with them today. We also have representatives, I think, from every developer that we're going to talk about today. So in the event that there are questions I can't answer, and if the board would like, we'll hear from them, but only if we have questions. I know that we're trying to stick to a tight schedule today, and so my comments will assume that everybody's read this, and what I'm going to try to do is highlight some of the exceptions that I think need to be discussed, and also just a brief overview of each deal. So if that makes sense, I'll get started. Our first request.
Excuse me, Ms. Ferguson, before you get started, let me just say, Chair Cervantes, I have, just as an abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote of 3 of the transactions. So items 6, 7, and 8, but I'm not sure if you're looking at all of them together.
I'm going to do each one individually.
Perfect, okay, so I'll just recuse myself and leave the room at that point.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so our first deal today is called Mason Sierra Apartments. We're asking for approval of Board Resolution 24-01, which allows for CalHFA to provide a $27,875,000 tax-exempt permanent loan and a $1.6 million MIP subsidy loan for this project. This is a 196-unit single-family rental project to be located in Lancaster in the County of Los Angeles, California. The permanent loan is underwritten to a 17-year maturity with a 40-year amortization, and the MIP subsidy loan is coterminous with the perm. Some highlights of this project: Mason Sierra is a new type of project for CalHFA, and an example of how tax credits can be used more creatively. The project will consist of 196 single-family homes that will be made available for rent to households earning between 30% and 70% of the Los Angeles County area median income. The average AMI served will be 60%, and actual rental rates will be 26 to 74% below market rental rates. Mason Sierra is a unique partnership between Ravello Holdings, the developer, and the City of Lancaster. The project site was purchased from the Lancaster Housing Association as part of a larger 60-acre parcel, which is subject to a negotiated disposition and development agreement, what we call a DDA. The subject project is phase 1 of the negotiated DDA. It will have 197 single-family units to be built on 25 of the acres. There are 2 additional and independent phases to be built over the next 4 years, which will include an additional 153 units. The project is in a low resource area, and it will include a community building with business center, exercise facility, central laundry facility, picnic and playground areas, and a swimming pool. Life Steps will provide tenant services to include adult education, health and wellness services, and programs. The services will be on-site and are required as part of the tax credit allocation over a 15-year period. The construction lender will be Merchants Bank of Indiana, the equity investor will be WNC and Associates, and the proposed property managed company will be Con-Am Management Corp. All are familiar to CalHFA. The developer, Revello Holdings, is a California corporation with 25 years of experience. As of October 2023, Revello had one market rate project totaling 229 units and one affordable project totaling 170 units currently under construction. They have 9 housing projects in their pre-development stage coming in the future. Revello has also completed 2 single-family rental projects in Lancaster and Palmdale totaling 290 units. One is market rate and one is an affordable LIHTC project. This will be their second affordable LIHTC single-family project. Both are fully leased and operating at DSCR, debt service coverage ratios, in excess of 115. Overall, Revello has developed more than 140 market rate and affordable multifamily projects, totaling more than 7,500 units. The staff report identifies 3 exceptions to policy and 2 weaknesses as listed on the slide. All are fully explained and mitigated in sections 8 and 9 of the staff report. I do want to point out one exception to policy that we're going to see on all 5 of the deals today. And it's something that we see on almost every deal we bring to the board, so I wanted to specifically call that out. The tax credit investor is requiring that the deferred developer fee payment be prioritized over the residual receipts lenders so that the deferred developer fee of $4,106,279 is fully paid by the end of year 15, which is the tax credit period. This is a common exception in the current market and is required by almost every tax credit investor. Based on current financial projections, available project operating cash flow should be sufficient to fully repay the deferred developer fee by the end of year 14 of the loan term. Subsequently, the surplus cash will be distributed 50-50 between the developer and repayment of the CalHFA MIP loan. Based on this structure, the CalHFA MIP principal and accrued interest will be fully repaid at maturity in year 17. This is a common, we're going to see the same exception recommended on all 5 of the deals today. And I just wanted to, I've already had a couple of questions, well, if it's an exception on every deal, why not just change the policy? And the reason is because calling specific attention to the repayment of our loans and the source of repayment for our MIP loan specifically is important, and the market changes. This hasn't always been a requirement. The investor market changes. It's in a state of fairly dramatic change right now in terms of what investors are paying and where they're investing. So we continue to keep this as part of our guidelines so that we will call it out in the event that the market dictates. So I just wanted to point that out. And with that, that concludes my presentation on this deal, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Ferguson. I'd like to see if there's any questions by members of the board. I think I had a hand raised, Director Sotelo.
Thank you so much. So 2 questions. One is on the operating expenses. I noticed that that is below the tax credit minimums on this project, and there is a concern in general around operating expenses and underwriting to something less, and then once a project is completed and stabilized, that going up. And to the extent that it impacts the repayment of the developer fee and the repayment of our loan, I'm just concerned about whether the team has looked at that and has addressed that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. We have, and you'll see that on a few of the deals today, that the operating expenses, TCAC minimum is $6,000 a unit for operating expenses. This project is their operating expenses are at $5,662 a unit. The developer, based on their experience with their previous single-family rental projects, is projecting, and the property manager has concurred, that this is achievable. This is also a little bit higher than what we saw in the appraisal. So at this time, we are, we expect that these are achievable. I will say that on every one of the deals are always underwritten to the current year's rental rates. So in the event that we did have, say, a $400 increased operating expenses, by the time this deal is built and rolls into the permanent period where our loan will be funded, it's likely to have experienced at least one, if not two, increases to the HUD allowed rental rates from TCAC. So we will continue to assess that at the time of the perm, and but at this time we don't have any concern with that. We've looked at that, and you'll see that on a couple of other deals as well.
Okay, and then thank you very much for that. The second question I had really pertains to the developer fee issue that you were talking about. This project is $369,000 per unit on the TDC, which is exceptionally low given today's market rate. It's really amazing. So I assume that the investor has a lot of, guarantees and other, cost completion guarantees that they're imposing. So I'm not worried about that from our perspective. But can you explain to me the developer fee issue again? Because as I understand the tax credit regulations as it pertains to bond transactions, anything above the minimum of $2.5 million for a non-BIPOC deal has to be either contributed as a general partner fee and contributed to the project versus allowing it to be a deferred developer fee.
Boy, I'm really glad the developer is sitting right behind me. I'm going to try to answer this, but to my knowledge, if the full developer fee is not paid out during the 15-year tax credit period, there is potential for a loss of the tax credit, what we call a downward adjuster, to the investor. In the event, and we see this not irregularly, in the event that cash flow doesn't pay for the full amount of the developer fee, the developer steps up at year 15 and has to contribute that fee to the project. So that is why you see a lot of the, which is not what we would like to see, but is sort of the last resort and what we count on in underwriting our MIP, because our MIP is also, if we have a shorter term loan, our MIP is also coterminous with the permanent loan, which would be in year 16, 17. So that's, to my knowledge, that's the best I can answer that. I don't. Yes.
I think, Chair Cervantes, I understand that as a concept. That's what it is in order to be able to generate the credits on which the developer fee was based.
Right.
I think what I'm talking about, and the only reason I'm asking about this is because it does impact the repayment of our loan. So I don't want to harbor on this issue, but the way I understand the relationship is a tax-exempt bond project can get 15% of its eligible basis towards the developer fee, which usually makes it somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 or $5 million. It makes it a larger amount. But under the regulations of the Treasurer's QAP, it really, you can only collect $2.5 million in actual capitalized developer fee. So the differential between the capitalized amount and the earned 15% developer fee for basis purposes can be contributed as a general partner contribution and still be counted in for your eligible basis perspective, as opposed to having it be paid out.
That, in terms of the TCAC regulations, I think that is correct. However, that is not what the market dictates in terms of the investor appetite to go into these deals.
So if the developer had anything else to add to that, I would love to hear from the developer in terms of the decision, like which investors are making that recommendation from a market standpoint so that the fee is actually being paid out.
I'm happy to have the developer come up, but before we do that, let me say that in our discussions with almost every investor, they're requiring that the developer fee have priority repayment during the 15-year tax credit, just for that very reason. But-
Yes, and absolutely we could support that. It's just, again, I'm talking about the dollar amount.
So you're talking about what TCAC
The differential
allows?
between the 2.5 and the larger 15% of basis.
Is it all right to have the developer? Would you like to come up? So the question, as I understand it, is that the developer fee is based on the developer fee is generally 4 to 5 million. TCAC only allows you to take 2.5 million in cash at closing. Does that mean that you, so why are you allowed to take additional developer fee out?
Cashed out. Right now, this particular transaction shows a cash out developer fee of $3.3 million versus the 2.5.
And if I could ask our developer to introduce himself, that'd be much appreciated.
Yeah. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Chair Cervantes, CalHFA board. It's a real honor for me to be here in front of you, and it has been, I must say, a pleasure working with Kevin and Kate. We're very excited to bring this new building housing model to you, which we've been, as Kate has mentioned, we've been very successful with over the last 3-4 years. We believe that the project will generate the cash flow to support the development fee. You know, our history has been on the past projects that we've had is that, you know, this is unlike a multifamily where you have to complete the whole project at one time and then start leasing units when you're at peak capital. We start leasing as soon as homes are ready because they're individual. That generates us a significant amount of upfront cash flow. Plus also our current projects are 100% leased up before we even finish the projects. So we're literally waiting for people to move in. So that's a big edge for us in the beginning. Plus also we've found that past history that these projects remain 100% occupied. So we believe the cash flow will be there for us to honor our commitments that we presented to you.
And Member Sotelo, I think to your question, the difference is that there's a 2.5 million flat fee, but there's also 20,000 a unit if it's over 100 units. And so that's how we get to the 3 million in initial cash out. If that was your question? No, that's not.
That wasn't my question, but that's a very good answer, so I appreciate that. That is a good answer. That helps me understand a little bit better, so thank you very much. I appreciate your answer on that. I just, again, my concern is around the repayment of the MIP loan and not deferring that, because we basically use the repayment of the MIP loan to invest in other projects. And so that's why it becomes something where, you know, it is residual receipts, but we want to be able to recycle those dollars and fund other additional projects. So we would like it not to go, you know, to be delayed because the developer is getting more of the fee than they should be getting. So thank you very much. And in this case, it's not the case because it's 20,000 per unit. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, can we have your name for the record?
Yes. Could you state your name?
Phil Rand, I'm the CEO of Vela Holdings Inc. We're a California-based company and been in business for many, many years. And as I mentioned, we're so excited to be bringing this very unique type of housing model to California. And we're kind of seeing and witnessing firsthand how it's really changing lives of young families who would never have an opportunity to live at a certain income in a detached single-family home with a private backyard and full community services. And we emphasize health and fitness, and we make sure all of our communities have gyms. And I welcome each and every one of you to come visit with us to see that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Director Russell and then Director White.
Are we on? There we
Okay, I think we're on now. Yeah, I have a question, and this isn't, I don't want to question the project so much as identify an issue that I'd like to discuss when we talk about MIP in general. And so I guess I would ask whether we have policies within MIP. I mean, this is, I realize families' backyards are all very nice. We're also building low density, below the zone density of the land on the urban fringe in a low opportunity area without transit. Are we considering in MIP broader policy directions of the state of California in how this is designed and how it is implemented? So I just want to point out that this raises some of those issues. I have taken no exception to this project and will not at this point. I'm here to support this today, but I think I want to, as we talk through these 5 deals, there's a couple other places where it raises these kinds of policy questions that I hope you can put into a workshop to have that discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Director White?
Yeah, sure. Just a question around the single-family part of this. This is new for CalHFA in terms of the MIP program. We had a question around expenses. It didn't seem like they were apples and apples, but in terms of single family versus the multifamily rentals, it's coming out as very similar and under TCAC standards.
I mean, yes, this does meet TCAC standards, and the appraisal that we received also supported the expense load. I don't know if you'd like to hear from the developer on that, on how they set their expenses, but we were very careful to look at the appraisal and what comes in with the appraisal and how that compares to the TCAC standards, but nothing excludes single family if the deal can be put together with the resources and the affordability. So
Got it.
is that your question?
That is my question.
Okay.
Just we don't have this in our portfolio, right?
We don't have a single family deal like this in the portfolio. No.
Just one follow-up question on the affordability. Did the single-family piece of this drive the lion's share to the 70%? I can see about 100, not 70%, 120%, which I'm very happy to see. Did that drive kind of
the units are restricted between 30 and 70% of AMI.
And then I'm seeing 134, maybe I'm reading this wrong.
You're probably looking at the chart that talks about the different regulatory agreements,
Okay.
which don't necessarily, the one to look at on that chart is the bottom one, which is the LIHTC, which speaks specifically to affordability. The bond agreement will be different because it's got a broader affordability requirement. So the CalHFA bond agreement will be less specifically restricted than the TCAC regulatory agreement.
Got it.
Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, either way, I mean, it's nice to see a good amount of units towards that 70%, or the average is 70%.
Right.
That's it.
Thank you, Director White. Are there any other questions? I've got a couple, and I'm not sure they're questions, but I was thinking about the MIP aspect of this, and we talked about this earlier, but whereas the baseline or the base case, if you will, for MIP is that we start to get payment back at the outset, not deferring it. That's like the baseline, which is why this is an exception. You highlighted that. And this exception in different form or fashion applies to every single one of these transactions. So
Yes.
the case here is, this is, to your point, this is the market telling us what works.
It's
and
driven
we're
by
adapting.
the investor market, yes.
Right. So as much as I'd prefer that we get the MIP pot sort of reimbursed from the get-go, we're sort of making a trade-off here, so to get this project done and the others by deferring it.
It's the market norm, and that's the market that we operate in. I will say that what I said originally to Member Sotelo's, I think her question as well as this question, is we leave it in our guidelines because we recognize that that's a priority. Where the exception is responding to market, what's required by investors in the market today.
Right. So it's sort of like taking the bird in the hand versus two in the bush here. And the bird in the hand is, this is a project that will get done with this approach. The two in the bushes, we find something else down the line where we could get reimbursed faster, but we want to have a project. That's,
Yes, and it would be very hard to find a project with an investor in this market that wouldn't require this. It would be a different type of program structure.
okay. So I think that it makes me appreciate the MIP program more in that it's pretty elastic, it seems. You know, it provides a critical piece to get a transaction done, and yet we can adapt it with exceptions, as noted here.
Yes, and
To
it
make
is,
it work.
it's soft subsidy dollars, and that's the same with other soft subsidy, you know, locality funds that we'll see in some deals, HCD funds that we see in some deals. Soft cash flow loans are generally the most flexible in a structure. Yes.
So in lay terms, I guess I'd call it like a secret sauce, you know, in a way, in a transaction like this.
Yep, yes, I like that.
I just want to make sure I'm kind of thinking about this the right way in broader terms.
Yes.
Because this is the one aspect of this transaction that I was kind of going through my head on. I get it where in a place like Lancaster, single family would be something that works. Lots of land there, and that's a market type that people can gravitate to. I can appreciate how they'd be full up from the get-go. And yet, and this is sort of the exception where this is our first single family MIP deal. Is that, do I have that right? Okay. So, again, I kind of like that we have something, a tool that's so flexible, which is kind of nice to have in a toolkit.
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I am done, and I'm going to pass it to Sasha for.
If I may, thank you for joining us today as well, and Kate, thanks for the presentation. And perhaps this is something also to punt to the workshop, but I'll be interested in some of the outcomes of this project so that we can study this typology, just knowing, aside from how we reflect on other state policy goals, knowing that we need more housing of all types in just about every place of the state, but we do have climate goals that we need to be mindful of. There were some other things that I noticed in the project that I think are interesting and are worth uplifting. One is the partnership and the emerging developer nature, though you are not new to development, but you're new to tax credit partnerships, and so I appreciate the partnership, and I always look forward to figuring out and seeing how those partnerships bear over time. But the other are some of the, I found more innovative things that you're doing, restricting the electrical cost to the residents, their cost to electricity being limited, and we'll be interested to see how that goes with the solar income that you receive. So just wanted to point out a couple of things that can reduce the housing and transportation and utility cost burden by keeping located near transit, but also restricting the utility cost to the residents. I just found that very novel. I do, with portfolio management experience in mind, I'm very interested in the management costs over time. And so this is not scattered site and being dispersed throughout Lancaster, but still scattered site nature, and so reliant upon residents expressing when there's a work order, things like that. They're not responsible. So I'll be curious about those things. Not asking you to speak to them all now, but Kate, just want to plant a flag for the ways that we can collect data on that going forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Agree.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments, observations on this particular transaction? I don't see any hands raised, and with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve Resolution 24-01.
Motion to approve.
Thank
Second.
you, Director Hannon.
Second.
Second from Director Finance. Melissa, can you, I want to see if there's any public comment on this before we take a vote. Sorry about that. Looking into the public, and I don't see any hands raised. Melissa, can you please call the vote?
Start again. Ms. Avalon Frias?
Yes.
Chair Cervantes?
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Lamont?
Approved.
Mr. Henning?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Fegels?
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 24-01 is approved.
Great, thank you very much. And as this project develops, we're looking forward to some learning lessons that we'll like to take from this as we move along here as it's a different prototype. So thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the staff for the work on this and for presenting us to something a bit different. With that, I'm going to move to the next agenda item, which is the 1400 Long Beach project. And I'll pass that to Kate Ferguson again to walk us through this.
There we go. Thank you, Chair Cervantes. Our second request today is for the approval of Board Resolution 24-02, which allows CalHFA to provide a $21,170,000 tax-exempt permanent loan and a $4 million MIP subsidy loan for 1,400 Long Beach apartments. This is a 163-unit, to-be-built multifamily apartment project in Long Beach, Los Angeles County, California. The permanent loan is underwritten to a 17-year maturity with a 40-year amortization period, and the MIP subsidy is coterminous with the perm. 1,400 Long Beach will be a 163-unit mixed-income family development with rents restricted between 30 and 70% of Los Angeles County area median income. Overall average affordability will be 55% of A in line. Actual rental rates will be 25 to 75% below market. The project will be located in a low resource area, and the capture rate is less than 1%, which is very reflective of the market need for this housing at this time. The developer's Meta Development. Bank of America will be both construction lender and equity investor, and WS Management, Inc. will manage the property. CalHFA has extensive experience with all of these partners. Life Steps will provide services to the tenants, including adult education programs such as financial literacy, computer training, GED studies, and ESL. Additionally, individualized health and wellness programs will also be offered. The developer, Meta Development, currently has 5 projects totaling 772 units in the CalHFA pipeline. 4 projects are under construction, and 1 project is in approval, the subject project. 15 projects totaling 1,238 units are in the CalHFA asset management portfolio. All projects are operating as agreed. We did have 1 project that had experienced historically high vacancy due to some criminal activity. That has been stabilized at this time, and as of 12/31/23, the project is fully occupied and operating in a stabilized manner. CalHFA Asset Management and CalHFA inspectors continue to monitor the situation on a quarterly basis. The staff report identifies 6 exceptions to the guidelines, and all are fully explained and mitigated in the staff report in sections 8 and 9. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board on this project? I see one hand, Director Sotelo.
Thank you very much.
2 for 2.
Can you just walk us through the exceptions on the policy for the record, just so that we have the dialogue?
Absolutely. We have the residual receipts split, which is an exception, the same exception that we have on the previous deal. The tax credit investor is requiring that the deferred developer fee payment be prioritized and fully paid by the end of year 13. This is a common exception, as I've said before, and the tax required by B of A in this case. Based on current financial projections, available project operating cash flow will not be sufficient to fully repay the DDF by the end of year 13, and a GP contribution for the remaining balance of $920,000 will be required. Subsequently, the surplus cash will be distributed 50-50 between the developer and repayment of the CalHFA MIP loan. That is the first one. Any? Okay. The second one is that the acquisition cost is higher than the as-is value on the appraisal. The acquisition cost of the land is $6.4 million, which includes $394,547 of holding costs and $2.1 million of excess purchase price over the appraisal. The appraisal values the land as is at $3.9 million and is based on the current zoning allowance of 65 market rate units at $60,000 a unit. The project qualifies for a density bonus, which allows it to exceed the zoning of 65 units. The value of the land based on the current proposed 163 units at $60,000 is $9,780,000, which is significantly higher than the purchase price. The third exception is proposed operating expenses below the TCAT minimum. We've talked about this This TCAC allows a 15% difference to their minimum requirement, and it is within that 15%. The HUPA, however, the per unit, per annum expense has to be proven out and approved by the investor and all lenders prior to the closing of our perm loan. So that's that one. And then vacancy related to the additional income in laundry. The appraisal concluded laundry and other income as net of vacancy, so no vacancy rate was applied to that. And that is an uncommon practice in an appraisal, which is why it's noted. It's a nominal number, but it is an uncommon practice. The other thing that we'll see on a few of these deals, as you probably noticed when you were reading them, is that the locality's regulatory agreement will be senior to the CalHFA bond regulatory agreement and CalHFA MIP regulatory agreement, and will be subject to review and approval of CalHFA. And CalHFA generally does a standard standstill agreement with localities in this event. This is not uncommon, but it is an exception to our policy. So those were the exceptions.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Christenfellow. Any other questions, comments? I have one, actually, I think I mentioned I asked the prior one, if this is consistent throughout, but just to walk me through this, which is the sort of the takeout analysis, which is not section 8, wherein we do a projection of the, are we able, if I can, I'll restate this in my words and then you'll correct me. Looking at our perm loan and the MIP loan, where if we're in an interest rate environment that's 200 basis points higher, and also where we would add, and the cap, I'm sorry, I think it's cap rate's 200 basis points higher, and the rate environment's 300 basis points higher.
Yes.
Can we still get ourselves paid back here? The analysis indicates yes, but I'd like you to walk me through this so I know that we get our money back at the end per our projections and the stress.
So I don't, let me go to section 8 to make sure that I'm. So just let me say that on every one of our deals, when we do the takeout analysis, we stress it. And we stress it by adding 200 basis points to the current cap rate that the appraisal has used, and by adding 300 basis points to the current interest rate. And the reason that we do that is to so it's sort of a worst case scenario. We actually anticipate, but what we want to see is that if we did have this worst case scenario in 3 years, what would the deal really look like? Our rates are locked at construction closing, so it's a fairly draconian view, but we like to have a solid stress so that we can come back. So on this deal, if I'm looking at, I'm sorry, can you tell me what section you're on, Chair Cervantes?
I think it's section 8.
It's the project weaknesses mitigants, right?
Oh, I see. All right.
Final 2 bullets in section 8.
Thank you for finding.
Yes, the exit analysis, yes, final underwriting indicates that at refinance, the development will have the ability to fully repay the balance of the agency's first lien loan and a portion of the agency's MIP subsidy loan, leaving an outstanding unpaid balance of $4.5 million. To the extent such a refinance is insufficient to repay the MIP loan, any remaining balance would be paid from a general partner contribution. Our expectation is absolutely that the balance of any MIP loan and the balance of our perm loan will both be refinanced with new credit. So that's, but to the extent that that didn't happen for some reason, the general partner would have to, ours is must pay debt. Even though it's soft pay, it's must pay at maturity. So, so you're right. I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. You're right.
I didn't phrase it well. But the bottom line is we're sort of in the driver's seat here.
We are.
In this takeout scenario.
Yes. We try to stress it as much as we can to look at the worst case, and then we take the worst case and say, can the project support a refinance of that? And generally, that's where we land on all of these. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to see if there are any other questions from members of the board on the 1400 Long Beach project. I'd like to see if there's any questions, comments from the public. on this particular project? I do not see any hands raised for the public. I'd like to see if I get a motion to approve resolution 24-02.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Director Henning.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Director Sotelo. The motion is made and seconded. Melissa, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Davila Farias,
Yes.
Chair Cervantes.
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan,
Yes.
Ms. Lamont,
Yes.
Mr. Henning,
Yes.
Mr. Prince,
Yes.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Fiegel,
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo,
Aye.
Mr. Seeley,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Resolution 24-02 is approved.
Thank you so much. Okay, we can now move on to our next item, which is the Gardens at Bella Breeze in Lincoln. So we're going up to 5, and I'll have Kate, if you could walk through this, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cervantes. Our third request today is for the approval of Board Resolution 24-03, which allows CalHFA to provide a $21 million tax-exempt permanent loan and a $4 million MIP subsidy loan for the Gardens at Bella Breeze, which is a 189-unit multifamily apartment project to be located in the city of Lincoln in Placer County, California. The permanent loan is underwritten to a 17-year maturity with a 40-year amortization. The MIP subsidy loan is coterminous with the PERM. The Gardens at Bella Breeze is a planned construction of 189 mixed income units for families. The units will be made available at rents restricted from 30 to 80% of the Placer County area median income. Overall average affordability will be 58%. Actual rental rates will be 10 to 70% below market. The project is located in a high resource area. Kelly Ventures is the developer, and this is the first MIP deal Kelly has done with CalHFA. Given that this is the developer's first MIP funding request as the sole developer, they have engaged Miller Housing Advisors as consultant on the project, and Pacific West Contractors will be the GC. The developer has experience in developing similar affordable housing projects and is the administrative general partner on one other CalHFA portfolio project, which is operating as agreed. The construction lender will be California Bank and Trust, the equity investor will be CREA, and the proposed property management company will be Con-Am Management Corporation. CalHFA has experience with the construction lender, equity investor, and property manager. The staff report identifies one primary exception to guidelines, and I will just point out that that again is the residual receipt split that we've already discussed. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, comments from members of the board? Director White?
Thanks, Kate. There's actually one question, and it's going to relate to all of the deals in terms of the exit analysis.
Okay.
What's the exit coverage that you're sizing to?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
What's the
hear.
exit coverage, the debt service coverage that you size to when you're stressing the exit?
We look at a debt service coverage of a 115 to a 120 in the exit analysis.
So it's a 1.
At the higher interest rate, and we look at the value at the higher cap rate. So we add 300 basis points to the interest rate, and then we look at a 115 to a 120 exit analysis.
Okay. So it's not stated, I don't think, in the mitigants, but it sizes out to a 115 to this new lender on your exit.
Yes. To a 120 on this one.
120. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Director Limon?
My question is on, there's in the supply analysis, there's a bullet point that talks about 2 affordable projects under construction, which are anticipated to complete in 2023. I'm assuming those have been completed. I was wondering how those are doing in terms of take-up.
That are with us, or just general?
This is just in the supply of the region. So in the local market and area analysis.
Yes, I assume that those, I'm sorry, I assume that those have been completed. I don't have specific information on them though. If they were due to be completed, when we look at that, we're looking at our competitive environment, what's coming on.
Right.
So we're assuming that those are completed. I don't know if they were delayed into 2024.
But if they were completed, we don't have any information on how they're doing in terms of take-up?
I don't.
I would just
I
say,
am
Ms.
happy-
Lamona, I apologize
No,
for
please.
interrupting. that the Lincoln Plaza area oftentimes is considered part of the broader Sacramento area and region, and is where more affordable places are for residents and workers down here. And so when we look at this, we were particularly focused on this project because of that proximity to the state capitol and state employees and the affordability there. And I know that doesn't go directly to how those projects are doing, but I think for us, when we looked at it from the TCAC perspective, I considered that.
Thank you.
Directors, if I could ask that you use the microphones, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I would also say that if you look, the capture rate on this is 5.9%. So that's in a 9-month absorption period. So that's based on the current market. That's a strong capture rate for these deals. That means that they only have to capture 5.9% of the market, which is very indicative, as Director Henning said, of the competitive nature of the market.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Sotelo stepped away, so I think maybe I'll ask her a question for her. On the, you touched on the term sheet variations already, but maybe just spend a minute on that again, just kind of so we can make sure we all understand that.
On the residual receipts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
It's assumed that deferred developer fee payment will be prioritized over the residual receipt lenders so that 100% surplus cash is available for payment of the deferred developer fee through year 13, with 92% of the cash flow, leaving 8% of cash flow used for residual receipts payments to the MIP loan. Thereafter, the surplus cash split will be 50-50 between the borrower and CalHFA.
Thank you very much. Director Russell, you have a question?
The microphone.
So this appears to be part of a planned community, large master planned community. Is this, was there a set aside for inclusionary housing or anything that established the particular use on that site?
We have the developer here, so I could ask the
I see him going like this. So
No.
Okay. That's, I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Russell. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised from the board. I will look out to see if there's any public comment on this particular agenda item. I don't see any hands raised there. I'd like to see if I could get a motion to approve resolution 24-03.
Motion approved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Henning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Aviles. Liz, can you please call the roll, please?
Ms. Avila Farias,
Yes.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan,
Yes.
Ms. Lamont,
Yes.
Mr. Henning,
Yes.
Mr. Prince,
Yes.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Fegels,
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo has recused, Mr. Seeley,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Resolution 24-03 is approved.
Great. Thank you all very much. And we'll move on to our next MIP issue. This is Demery Projects in Visalia.
Yes.
Turn back to you, Kate, to talk us
Thank
through
you,
it.
Chair Cervantes. Our fourth request today is for the approval of Board Resolution 24-04, which allows CalHFA to provide a $19,437,000 tax-exempt permanent loan and a $4 million MIP subsidy loan for the Damari Street Apartments, which will be a 222-unit multifamily apartment project located in the city of Visalia in Tulare County, California. The permanent loan is underwritten to a 30-year maturity with a 40-year amortization period. The MIP subsidy loan is coterminous with the PERM. Damari Street Apartments is the planned construction of 222 mixed-income units for families that will be made available at rental rates that are targeting families between 30 and 80% of the Tulare County area median income. The average AMI will be 60%. Overall, the project rents will be 16 to 72% below market rate rents. Pacific West Communities, Inc., PWC, and AmeriCorps Development, Inc., AmeriCorps, are co-sponsors on this deal. Per MIP 2023 term sheet, AmeriCorps is identified as an emerging developer because while PWC and AmeriCorps have previously collaborated on affordable housing deals, all of which are currently under construction, AmeriCorps on those deals was listed as a GP, This will be the first affordable housing project that PwC and AmeriCorps are co-sponsoring with equal ownership. AmeriCorps has no experience in affordable housing developments in California. However, their development experience in the state has included retail, mixed use, and market rate residential. PwC has extensive experience in the industry and the state, and currently has 7 projects in CalHFA's development pipeline in various stages of approval, construction, lease up, and conversion to perm. The construction lenders will be California Bank and Trust and Bonneville Multifamily Capital. The equity investor will be Huntington Community Development Corporation, and the proposed property management company will be Con Am Management Corporation. CalHFA has experience with all of these partners. I want to point out for the board that this deal and the next deal that we'll look at both have third-party capital invested in them in the form of loans from Bonneville Multifamily Capital. As such, Bonneville will be taking a second lien position during the permanent loan term, and the MIP subsidy loan will be in third position. However, CalHFA's permanent loan will remain in first lien position. Some of the benefits of using this structure are that it substantially reduces the need for public subsidy. The Bonneville loan is funded by the sale of bonds to sophisticated investors with a mission-driven approach. This brings private capital to the state of California to support affordable housing development. The risk of this type of structure is limited given that Bonneville's loan is a soft loan, meaning that repayment is only via ongoing available cash flow. It is extremely rare for a cash flow loan to ever be in a position to declare a default and begin a foreclosure proceeding. But if that ever were to happen, CalHFA, being in first position, would be able to exercise our remedies under our first lien loan and eliminate the secured second. The Bonneville structure results in an additional twist to the exception we have seen on each of today's deals, which is related to the residual receipts split. While the tax credit investor will require the deferred developer fee have priority in years 1 through 14, they have also agreed that Bonneville, which is in second lien position, will have an at-par payout with the deferred developer fee during those years 1 through 14. In years 15 through 30 of the loan term, the project cash flow will be split 25% to the developer, 25% to Bonneville, and 50% to repayment of the MIP loan. Ultimately, agreeing to the structure will only result in a net reduction to the MIP repayment in years 1 through 14 of $311,000. The staff report identifies 4 primary exceptions to guidelines, and they are all explained and mitigated in section 8 and 9. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'd like to see if there's any questions or comments from members of the board on this item. Director White, you need to get a microphone over there.
Okay, just real quick, did the Bonneville structure in terms of their lien position, was that something negotiated through CalHFA, something that we wanted, or?
We've done several of these deals with Bonneville.
Okay.
In some instances, Bonneville is willing to go into third position. It's essentially a required yield that the bondholders have. If our loan is larger than the Bonneville loan that comes in, they're always willing to go behind the MIP loan. In this case, the Bonneville loan is larger, so they're requiring it be in second position. That's the only way that they can get the bondholders to get the pricing they need to make the deal work. But we have done several other deals with Bonneville and with Pacific West companies under this type of structure.
That's innovation. Definitely. Pretty creative. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from the board?
Thank you.
Dr. Kurgan, please.
Thank you. Kate, if you could walk us through section 8 of the project report here.
The exceptions to
the
policies.
Thank you.
On this one, we have the same exceptions, the residual receipt split exception, that starting in year 15, the surplus cash, the MIP loan will not receive surplus cash until year 15 unless the cash flow from the property in years 1 through 14 exceeds our pro forma and the Bonneville loan and the deferred developer fee can be fully repaid. We don't expect that, so we're estimating year 15. The second one is that operating expenses used from the developer are slightly lower than what is recommended in the appraisal. The projected cash flow from operations assumes the operating expenses provided by the developer, which are 0.8% lower than the recommendations in the appraisal. We're recommending these. It has a nominal impact and is based on the very extensive experience of the property manager and the developer. The third exception of policy is proposed operating expenses are below the TCAC minimum. Again, they're very close to what the appraisal and the market would dictate, and they are within the TCAC 15% waiver threshold. Again, on this one, the locality agreement, regulatory agreement, will be senior to the CalHFA bond regulatory agreement and the MIP regulatory agreement, and will be subject to CalHFA's review and approval and our standard standstill agreement.
Thank you. If I can just make one more comment too. Appreciate the notes always on the congruence with TCAC's regulations and specifically on the opportunity maps, and noting that this project, I think there was another project as well, that was in the highest opportunity area, and this one's so proximate to transit. So for my comment earlier about the outcomes, I'm also very interested in how proximity to amenities and really amenity-rich neighborhoods, including high-quality schools, how that tracks to the services outcomes. And I also appreciate all the times the staff notes the services connections that are here. So just long-term trajectory, I think this opportunity mapping is more of an emerging, within this administration that we've really launched it, would be open to seeing. I would be interested in seeing the data, to speak for myself.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and we'll make sure that we put that into our data capture.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from members of the board? Don't see any hands raised. So, Kate, we talked on this, and I think this is the first transaction I've seen with this type of structure.
Yes.
So trying to understand it, and I think let me put out the way I'm thinking of this and tell me if I'm wrong, which is there's this trade-off here. So with this project, we get 222 units in Visalia. It's affordable. And we're, again, using this very elastic MIP soft loan. We're in effect foregoing $311,000 in repayments over the first 15 years or so to sort of give the bond investors, in effect, what they need to get their in on this.
Yes.
So that's our trade-off.
It is.
And we still have the high cards with respect to the overall transaction as we have the first on this. And the MIP loan is tied to our first permanent loan.
Indeed.
Permanent loan.
Yes.
So.
The collateral position gives you your access to the property, and being in first position, if MIP's in third position, we still have access. We could exercise our remedies and take out the second position.
Right, and in as much as there's a market factor in all this, in another market cycle, I guess where our MIP loan is greater than the Bonneville piece, we'd be in clear second in that.
And that's been a structure we've done in the past.
Okay.
Yes.
In this cycle, that's just not going to happen. I mean, this is the deal we've got in front of us, and the trade-off being that we will forego the $311,000 over the first 15 odd years or so.
That's true, and I would say that given, as Member Kurgan has said, and as Executive Director Johnson Hall has said, we're seeing less and less sort of availability of subsidy funds to fill gaps. Mm-hmm. And so this structure, to Member White's comments, is it's an interesting structure that brings outside capital into the state to support our affordable housing needs. So that is the trade-off, though. To get this deal done and to bring that capital in, they have a yield that they have to get, the bondholders.
Right. Yeah, which is my old life, and I understand how that works. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Don't see any. I'd like to see if there's any questions or comments from the public. I'm not seeing any hands raised there. And I will ask for a motion to approve Resolution 24-04 to approve our commitment to the Demery Street project in Visalia.
Motion to approve.
And he's on his game here. Thank you. Henning, sorry.
Second.
Director White, second. With that, we have a motion made and seconded. Melissa, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Alba Farias?
Yes.
Chair Cervantes?
Yes.
Ms. Kerghan?
Yes.
Ms. Lalonde?
Approved.
Mr. Henning?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Fabels?
Yes.
Director Sotelo is recused. Mr. Seeley?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 24-04 is approved.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move to our next item, which I believe is our last MIP issue for the day. Stevens Creek Promenade in San Jose. Before I hand it over to you, I have to note, we have really kind of done the whirlwind tour of California today. And so I have to say, I don't know how if this is planned or just an accident, but to go from all these different locales, I think we hit almost everything. Maybe next time be San Diego.
San Diego.
There you go.
Empire.
Don't want to forget.
Right.
Don't want to forget that. So Kate, if you could please walk us through this issue, this transaction.
Absolutely. Our final request today is for the approval of Board Resolution 24-05, which allows CalHFA to provide $36,052,500 tax-exempt permanent loan and a $4 million MIP subsidy loan for the Stevens Creek Promenade Apartments, which will be a 173-unit multifamily apartment project located in the city of San Jose and Santa Clara County. The permanent loan is underwritten to a 30-year maturity with a 40-year amortization. The MIP subsidy is coterminous with the PERM. Stevens Creek is the planned construction of 173 mixed income units for families that will be made available for rent at rates restricted from 30 to 70% of AMI for Santa Clara County. The average affordability will be 57.7%. The project is located in a highest resource area, and units will be 18 to 65% below market rate units. The construction lenders will be Citibank and Bonneville Multifamily Capital. The equity investor will be Boston Financial, and the proposed property management company will be Con-Am Management Corporation. Pacific West Communities, Inc. and Miramar Property Group, LLC will be co-developers on this deal. This will be the first affordable housing project that PwC and Miramar are co-sponsoring, and they have no prior experience working together. Per the MIP 2023 term sheet, Miramar Property Group, LLC is identified as an emerging developer. PwC has extensive experience in the industry in the state and currently has 7 projects in CalHFA's development pipeline, as we've already stated. As with the Demary deal we just discussed, Bonneville will be in second lien position on this project, and the residual receipt split will be the same, with the deferred developer fee and Bonneville splitting project cash flow in the first 15 years of operation. This will result in a delay of full repayment of the deferred developer fee to year 14 versus 8, and a delay in the repayment of approximately $900,000 of MIP loan funds from years 8 through 14 to years 15 through 30. And the staff report identifies 3 primary exceptions to guidelines, which are explained in sections 8 and 9. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board on this project? I see Director White.
Thanks again, Kate. Not on this project per se, so maybe I can wait if there's other questions. I have a question that I always ask. Now that we have 5 deals in, what's the average AMI for the MIP program now?
For the overall program,
overall
it's
program.
very close to 60. I don't have that though based on 2023 numbers. It's usually 59 to 60, depending on the individual deals year to year.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I will be coming back to the board with a full recap of 2023, and at that time we'll cover the average AMI overall.
Thank you. Other questions from the board? I think what I'll do then is, since this is Director Stella's question, but maybe Jen, you can walk us through
Yes,
the
happy to.
variations again. Thank you.
Again, on this, we just talked about the residual receipts split. That's on the Damari deal. It will be the same for Stevens Creek with the deferred developer fee payment and the payment of the Bonneville bonds being paid out by year 14. The Bonneville subordinate bonds do require priority at par with the deferred developer fee. We also, after year 15, it will be the same structure with a split of 25% of cash flow going to the developer, 25% to Bonneville, and 50% to CalHFA. We also have proposed operating expenses, again, that are below the TCAT minimum. Project's proposed operating expenses assumes the operating expense provided by the developer of $6,650 per unit, which is $150 lower than the TCAP minimum, but still within the 15% waiver threshold of the TCAP minimum. Approvals of the proposed operating expenses, this tracks with the appraisal, and so we are approving that, recommending approval of that. We also have a locality regulatory agreement in first lien position. The regulatory agreement will be senior to CalHFA's bond regulatory agreement and ERMIP regulatory agreement, and will be subject to CalHFA's review and standards, including our standard standstill agreement. And that's the three exceptions that we have on this deal.
Great, thank you very much. Director Russell, and a microphone, please.
Yeah, I just want to follow on exactly what you just said. Could you unpack the standstill agreement a little bit, and then the potential negative impact, why it needs to be mitigated land, the density bonus agreement? How does that function as a negative that needs to be mitigated? How does this, and can you explain the standstill agreement?
Why? Well, they are, so the density bonus agreement is to be recorded senior to all debt and all restrictions. And then will come the locality regulatory agreement in first lien position. The density bonus agreement does not take a lien, but it is recorded first. The standstill agreements that we require basically require that they stand still under any, especially under the density bonus agreement, under any remedies that they might have in the agreement. They have to stand still. They can't act on those without CalHFA approval.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, let's see if there's other questions from, yes, Director Coogan.
Thank you for the extensive report. I was thinking about another project report that called out something, and I'd just like to ask for future reports if you consider a slight alteration. As so many projects, including this one, are not only complying with the Green Building Code, which includes solar, but I think it would be helpful to see how much the solar is offsetting the common area load, or if it ever is offsetting the resident load. Okay. Because what I noticed in the prior report was calling out how solar and Wi-Fi had a net benefit to the residents, and I think that was really a helpful call out, and I just don't see that here. So not trying to question what's going on, but just to mention
that's a really
that it
good
would be
point.
helpful.
Thank you.
In the future, because I think it is very important to offset the common area load, but the extent to which we can help cover utility costs is really important. With that, I just think it's also important to just highlight transparency in billing so that everybody knows how much they're using, even if the solar is covering. So I think energy efficiency is still important. Anyway, thank you, Kate.
I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board on this project? I don't see the hands raised. I think you've answered, the questions haven't as you've already answered on the other one, so I've kind of like exhausted my trove here.
Okay.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? I do not see any hands raised. And with that, I'd like to see if I can get a motion to approve resolution 24-05.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Henning. You're on street. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Director White, second. Thank you. And with that, we have a motion made and seconded to approve resolution 2405 for the Stevens Creek Promenade project. Melissa, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Avalos-Reyes?
Yes.
Chair Cervantes?
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Lamont?
Yes.
Mr. Henning?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Beagles?
Yes.
Member Sotelo is recused. Mr. Seeley?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 24-05 is approved.
Great, thank you all very much. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I really would like to thank you and your staff for the work on this. It takes a lot to get to this point, and it's good to see these projects moving ahead. Thank you.
And we'll be back next month.
Looking forward to it. Thank you. And with that, we are now on agenda item 9, which is an update on the mid-year operating budget. I would like to have Director of Finance, Owen Tam. And I'll note that in this environment, oftentimes we talk a budget, we start to cringe, but I don't think that's the case this time.
No, all right, sorry, my staff was messaging me, and I was supposed to bring my own pink Barbie dream mic, but I did not today. So I'm just gonna sit here casually and talk to you all about the budget. But yes, it's a pretty good story for us on the operations side of the house. So good morning, Chair Spontes, members of the board. Erwin Tam, Director of Financing, here today to present an update on the agency's fiscal year 2024 operating budget. So as we discussed in December, the agency did make changes to its accounting practices to allow for monthly unaudited actuals. And in an effort to keep the board apprised of the overall financial health of the agency, I think we can go to the first page, excuse me. The mid-year operating budget is now being presented in January rather than March. And as a reminder to the group, it is the policy of the agency as stipulated in the state code that CalHFA is to be fiscally self-sufficient in its operations. Let's go to the next page. And yep, that's what I thought. It's going to be a page of very small numbers. But just as a reminder, for folks following at home, it's on page 284 of the packet that's available online, and it should be in each of your binders. We start with the first column, which is 5-month unaudited actuals, and we also have projected year-end actuals. Our revenues are broken down by single-family and multifamily lending programs. Single-family programs at the mid-year is above budget, and is also expected to end the year above budget. This is due in part to the securitizations from Dream for All Phase 1 that were not recognized as revenue during the prior fiscal year. Multifamily programs are currently below budget at the mid-year due to slower than projected permanent loan conversions for developments currently in construction. However, the multifamily program's budget at the end of this fiscal year is also projected to be above budget. Total agency expenditures are below budget, generally across all of the agency's expenditure categories. Salaries and benefits are the largest operating expense for CalHFA and are projected to end the year about $5 million below. Let's go to the next page. As we discussed prior, single-family revenues through the TBA market are received as one-time revenues, while multifamily revenues are typically recognized as revenue spread over time. As the unaudited actuals at the end of year projections show, CalHFA production has been a story of resilience in the face of higher interest rates. Even though rates are slightly down from recent highs, our mortgage rates are still 3/8 to a half point higher than they were a year ago. One interesting point that I wanted to show the board is that of our mix of revenues for the production divisions. Fiscal year 2021 had single-family revenues representing 75% of the total production, while single-family programs still represents a majority of the current revenues, it is declined to 57%. Continued financial success for all of the agency's lending programs is dependent on a set of macroeconomic factors, including economic growth, employment rates, and inflation. Let's go to the next page. So, as you notice, the state has announced measures to reduce our current year general fund expenditures and to ensure more prudent spending from other state funds. As a fiscally self-sufficient agency, I'm pleased to share that over the past 3 years, under the leadership of the Executive Director, Tina Johnson-Hall, and this Board of Directors, the agency's operating expenditures have increased by a rate of about 2.2% annually. And that compares to an overall inflation rate in the state of California of 5.3%. And I think that just goes to show, I'm going to put an exclamation point on this, right, is that we are 3.1% below the rate of inflation in terms of our operating expenses over the past 3 years. And I think that really demonstrates that fiscal responsibility and stewardship of public funds is within the DNA of CalHFA. As discussed during the development of this year's budget, the agency was going to take a closer look at some of the larger expense categories, such as professional and consulting services. CalHFA recently implemented a new contract approvals process led by the Office of the General Counsel. We have included a tiered review and approval process, including the budget officer, director of enterprise risk management and compliance, myself, and the executive director and chief deputy director. Additional review will include evaluation of the mission-critical nature and purposes of any expense. Savings resulting from these new procedures will be reported to the board in upcoming meetings. I think one last thing of note is that we really have defied gravity, right, in terms of our operating expenditure rate at less than half the rate of inflation, which means two things that I see, is that savings will we will receive savings through cost savings methods, and I believe we already have through reduction in out-of-state travel. However, they will generally be measured in thousands or tens of thousands of dollars because of the way we've already conducted ourselves in terms of already lowering or living within our means. Second is that, since I've referred to this as defying gravity, what we're going to see is probably a more, in the long term, is a return to convergence to inflation. We can't run at an OPEX rate of 3% below inflation. That's just not sustainable in the long term. Lastly, I wanted to just preview what is going to happen in upcoming meetings. There's been an ask that we report to the board on a more regular basis in terms of the agency's operating budget, so we're going to do it quarterly in conjunction with the strategic plan update. So you'll see in February, we will produce the half mid-year report on the agency strategic plan and also the 6-month operating budget results. In March, I will be back in front of you asking the board to consider adoption of various resolutions relating to the financial operations of the agency to finance both its single-family and multifamily lending programs. And in May, this board will be asked to consider adoption of the fiscal year 2024-2025 operating budget. So you'll be seeing a lot of me, I guess, in every single meeting going forward here. That concludes my brief remarks today. I'm open for any questions that the board may have.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to see if there's any questions for Mr. Tam. Director Hanning?
Mr. Tam, first I want to compliment you as a director on the reducing the amount of consulting professional expenses. I think that's tremendous. Not only, I know you're focused on the dollars, but at the same time you're growing the expertise that exists within the department and making sure that exists there. I think that's very important as we continue to move forward. Housing is not going away tomorrow. This is something that we're going to be dealing with for quite a while. So very much compliment you there. I am a little concerned, and to be honest with you, this is not a CalHFA issue, but it is an overall budget concern for the state of California. And I think that it's been brought up before on how we're going to get through this, but the governor mentioned that we're going to be looking at sweeping additional funds that come from vacancies. I'm just going to extrapolate that the salary savings that you have there is because of vacancies coming out of the pandemic.
It's also a part of the function of, I think, what I've directed our sort of budget to look like. I think in prior years we have assumed sort of a staggered approach in terms of our start dates on new employees, and therefore, in my opinion, and I'll take any sort of comment that any board member may have, it became incredibly difficult to kind of calculate. We were a small agency, and to be like this person starts in October, therefore we're going to prorate this, and then if this person starts in November, we're going to prorate this. We basically budget to the full fiscal year, and that is to I think we kind of exercised a sort of false precision in some ways, and I think that we want the flexibility to make sure that each of our department heads or division heads, excuse me, is flexible enough to hire if they need to during the fiscal year.
I very much appreciate that, but you know, as a partner in housing with the governor and CalHFA, you know, we're going to be working together as much as we possibly can on some of these numbers because we're really pulling from the same applicant pool in a lot of ways when it comes to those types of employees, trying to make sure that we have the ability and continue to hit the ability and goals that the governor has as well as the state has as far as affordable housing. But, you know, I just want to make sure that I do note our concern about those funds being swept moving into the future.
I have a question.
Thank you. Director Williams?
Along Patrick's comments, given that CalHFA is independent, an independent agency that's responsible for maintaining its own independent funds aside from whatever the California state budget is, are we subject to sweeps from a different state entity, given that we are independent, so that our prudence and forward thinking that leads to savings doesn't end up looking like an opportunity to be swept due to other budgetary issues in other state agencies?
Is that a question for the chair?
That is a question for the chair.
That may be above my pay grade. I think there's a, I think we talked about vacancy report in a prior meeting, and we may want to pick that up at a subsequent one.
Yeah.
And the ins and outs of all that, I think your chair is going to defer on that question. It's a good one. But I think when we get into the budgeting cycle that's coming up, that may be something we might want to take some thought on. I don't know if our general counsel has a comment on that, and I do want to keep in mind that this is sort of a mid-year budget update, so I kind of want to bring the discussion back to that at some point. This is a bigger picture issue you raised, Director Williams, which may be appropriate for a subsequent session.
And if I may, Chair, I agree with you that, oh, sorry, thank you, and thank you for the microphone.
That is a loaded question that I think that we need to put a little bit more work into before we can talk. But I think that what we will do, I see that as a potential workshop discussion item. Let's bring it back for you so that we, I want to make sure that we check everything that is related to how that works before we go on the record about how that actually works.
Okay.
Would that be satisfactory to you, Director?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'll leave that one at that. Any other questions on the mid-year budget update for Mr. Tan?
Great job.
Because my one comment, it's really more like when I saw these figures in the agenda report, I was really struck by in a challenging interest rate environment that we're dealing in, we're still chugging along.
Yeah.
And more than that, actually. If you look at the results, it's kind of, it was counterintuitive to me. I thought we'd see more challenges in this than what we're demonstrating here. Any insight or wisdom you might want to offer on that point?
I think that, you know, CalHFA is one of the few, in terms of the state of California, offers down payment assistance on the single-family lending side. Is one of the few entities that is able to do so statewide. And as you know, housing prices remain relatively high, interest rates remain relatively high. A lot of the low and moderate income potential home buyers are looking towards additional sources of funds, and they're coming to CalHFA because that's what exactly we offer towards, again, potential homeowners with low and moderate incomes. And it's a great story of resiliency in terms of our product offerings, and obviously a lot of hard work that's done with our multifamily and single family lending staff to kind of make sure that we are checking along in the face of higher interest rates.
Thank you. Any last questions for Mr. Tan? Don't see any hands raised. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Do not see any hands raised in the audience. And with that, there's no action on this item. Thank you very much. We look forward to the subsequent updates that you'll provide us. Thank you. Our next item is item 10, information written reports. We have 3. There's a single-family loan production report, an ADU grant program update, which our executive director touched on earlier, and a staff vacancy report. I think what I'll do is see if there's any questions from members of the board after we've all read these. For follow-up, we have staff come up. I'm going to look out to see if there's any follow-up questions that the members of the board might have on these 3 items, these information reports. I don't see any. Is that a hand raised?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Please.
I just wanted to, on the report, when we're actually going to have it back on the agenda for discussion on the ADU, and also partnerships. I'm seeing a lot of activity happening on the lending side, that they're trying to figure out how to put private sector out loan products for people to finance. So I'm really curious. I'm happy to see that movement in the lending area space, but I think we need a lot more collaboration to get them closer to do something. In addition to who is taking the lead in dealing with HUD around the appraisals that don't accommodate right now accessory dwelling units. As people build them, they're still lumped in together as one unit, which is obviously not reflective of what people built, and impacts also loan to values. So I think we need to do some aggressive work on changing those appraisals and how they're viewed. Especially, I foresee that this program is going to continue to grow and demand is going to continue to grow, and so we need to not be operating in this space that does not conform with what we're trying to achieve financially.
Thank you. I just think that's a good segue into other board matters for things, topics to pick up, and I'll collaborate with the executive director on that. Anything else with respect to the 3 information reports in the package? Okay, please.
Thank you. When I looked at the vacancy report, I think 13% is actually pretty good coming out of the pandemic. Are there any, and I like the way that it was broken down, are there any sections or divisions that are of particular concern? I know you broke it into sort of high-level employees, but at the same time, are we seeing like a 10% vacancy in one division, or any sort of dispersion like that?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Director Henning, for your question. I will ask our Chief Deputy Director to step to the table to respond to that question, as well as we have our Director of Administration who is here. Jennifer, would you like to join him?
Thank you so much for the question. Chris Schultz, Chief Deputy Director. Thank you for the question, Mr. Henning. As a result of this report, we asked the same question, which is, can we have a report of vacancies by division, how long they've been vacant, who the hiring manager is? I don't know the answer to the question today, but we spotted the same thing, and are working on an interim. We'll have a report next meeting.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure, in particular, being selfish from the Treasurer's Office, we want to make sure that the communications back and forth with our 2 separate departments continues to run smoothly, and if we can help in any way to address some of those more.
I wouldn't know, you did ask a question, if I could, last month about the difference between our 2 key positions.
Sorry, Chris, I don't think your microphone's on.
I apologize. Is that any better?
Yes.
Thank you. Apologize. You did ask a question last month about the key positions that we're reporting on in the strategic plan and the overall vacancy rates. We broke that out in this report. The key positions are kind of key management positions that, right, you need those people in place to hire the people underneath them, right? And so 2 of them are governor's appointees and 2 of them are CEAs, for which we've recruited 4 or 5 times just with lack of excellent candidates. And so we have a laser-like focus on filling those jobs because that helps fill everything underneath.
I understand your pains.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from the board on these 3 information items? Thank you. And I'll look for any kind of public comment on these. I don't see any hands raised in the public, so we will move on to other board matters. These would be topics that we want to pick up in a subsequent board meeting. I think I've been keeping notes here. I'll coordinate with our executive director on that, sort of more information on MIP. Director Avlev, as you mentioned, like HUD appraisal standards, ADUs, something with private lenders as well. Is there something, I think you had a third item, I want to make sure you don't forego what you had raised.
Nick, just put it on the agenda to have discussion, because I mean, there's other category, I mean, there's all those things tie into other ramifications and obstacles that I think need to clear.
Okay.
I think you captured it, Chair.
Good.
Chair, if I may, one more?
Yes, Director Kruger.
And then just perhaps a discussion on some of the emerging infrastructure dollars that, as I mentioned at the start, other policy areas that can have housing outputs, transportation being one, but specifically energy. And I certainly, again, speaking for myself, am very interested in making sure that all state housing programs are good receptors of potential investments, particularly from the energy sector. As we see, our climate goals connected to energy, I want to make sure that we're tuning up our programs appropriately so that we're keeping pace and can receive those investments. Thanks.
Good, thank you very much. Any other, Director Russell?
Well, maybe to elaborate on the MIP discussion, I mean, some of the things, obviously, we're only seeing the larger MIP deals, and so it's hard to draw conclusions about what policy outcomes we're getting from, or what projects we're getting from policy decisions based on just almost more than greater than $15 million commitments. So I'd be interested in seeing, some of these projects we're pushing, if we're pushing to the outer urban limits, I mean, that's an area of concern when we talk about climate. High opportunity, low opportunity, obviously we have it in the reports, but we don't see that for the other programs. How we go about actually adjusting the underwriting standards too, because we put out a new term sheet annually, I believe, and what is the process by which that you go through internally to determine what are the adjustments that need to be made to get the outcomes that we're seeking? So a little insight into the term sheet process would be valuable as well.
That's good. Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other that's a full basket right there. That'll be a longer meeting, I think. With that, then, we've got our next agenda item, which is 12, public comment, and I have a public comment card. And I would like to, if any, this is from Yasmin Llamas Morales, and I'd also ask if there's any other members of the public who would like to make a comment at this point, fill one of these out. And thank you. I'd like to welcome. And just a couple of things. We generally ask participants to limit their comments to 3 minutes. And inasmuch as it's not an agendized item, we really can't get into the details of that. But we will take note of anything you say here. We can maybe follow up later on. So please, you have the floor, Ms. Morales. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Yasmin. I am a residential lender and I specialize in down payment assistance. Last year, I got a very diverse group of clients into homes. Union carpenters, electricians, team members from Target, aeronautic technicians, barbers. So I really like to focus on diversity and first-time home ownership. And what I've noticed that needs to happen in the guidelines is you need to allow for FHA streamline refinances to happen because they're currently not allowed. And last year, a lot of my buyers will benefit from being able to streamline refinance through FHA. Potentially conventional refinances also, but those are harder to qualify for. So I would ask that you update that guideline to allow for people that purchased at the higher interest rates last year to be able to FHA streamline to benefit from the reduced payments. So that was the one thing on the agenda that I would like for you to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. That's much appreciated. Any other members of the public with a comment? Not seeing any. Our last item is adjournment. Before I get there, again, we'll see you all next month for another tour of California. And I think, is that?
Something else. So that was on the agenda for the single family thing, but this is another public comment separate to that.
Oh, it's two comments? I'm sorry.
So this is separate.
Tell us everything you want to tell us.
In 3 minutes.
I'll follow up with email later today. Okay, so I have an idea for you. If you allow if you allow rehabilitation loans with down payment assistance, you will open up a lot of homes for first-time home buyers. Right now, a lot of my clients are at the lower purchase price and they're competing with cash investors that are flipping homes. When these cash investors come in and buy these homes below market value, not only are they taking homes away from first-time home buyers, they are buying these homes from modest income sellers who are usually senior citizens or families that are probate of low income that cannot refurbish these homes. So these cash investors are coming in, buying these homes at dirt prices, flipping them and selling them astronomically, driving up the homes in neighborhoods. 6 out of 10 of my buyers are willing to buy homes that require TLC. So if you mix DPA with rehabilitation loans, they will be able to beat out cash investors and buy these homes from sellers. So the seller wins, and the first-time home buyers win because they're able and they're willing to put in the work to buy these homes. Right before I walked in here, I got off the phone for a purchase that one of my clients had submitted in San Pablo. The house was listed at $399. They offered $440. A cash investor offer was accepted because it's cash. So if you allowed rehabilitation loans with DPA, my client would have potentially been able to purchase that home at a higher price than the cash flipper that's going to drive up the neighborhood prices. Further, another suggestion, I'm having a lot of issues with realtors accepting down payment assistance offers. They have this misconception that there's no teeth in the game, right? So if you were to collaborate with the Department of Real Estate and say, hey, let's put some education in the training for these realtors to understand the importance of down payment assistance in the housing crisis, let it be part of the exam, incentivize these agents. If they sell a number of houses to DPA, you'll reduce their fees or whatnot. Provide tax credit to sellers that accept down payment assistance offers when they sell these homes to down payment assistance. You'll open the door for more sellers willing to accept down payment assistance offers. That is my biggest hurdle, is getting realtors to accept and understand that at the end of the day, a wire from CalHFA or whatever the bank is the same thing as money that comes from a private seller or somebody with just a regular loan that does not have DPA. So we need to educate realtors and get them to understand that at the end of the day, cash is cash. Whether it's DPA or not, they still have skin in the game. It may not be a 10% down payment, it may not be 20% down payment, but it is that urgency and that desire to have a roof over the family's head that will drive them to complete the requirements to get these loans. So there needs to be a mass collaboration and education of realtors, and not just willingly, it has to be forced upon them, because I don't think that they understand the urgency of housing in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Those are very good comments. We appreciate it. Thank you. Any other members of the public? Comment? I don't see anything. So with that, we're on our last agenda item, which is adjournment. This meeting is adjourned. We'll look forward to seeing you all next month for another round of our MIP transactions and some of the other items we've talked about. Look forward to seeing you all in a month. Adjourned.